already in progress. Call the meeting to order, roll call, Mr. Demick,
Donald Demick, present.
Ms. Thompson,
Rose Thompson, present.
Ms. Pearson,
Present.
Francis White, present.
Robert Cummings, present. Yeah. A quorum, call the meeting to order. Becky, do we have any public comments?
No, sir, Mr. Clemens, we did not receive any public comments.
Thank you. I think we agreed yesterday to move, we had left yesterday with the left officers, first thing on the agenda this morning, so, your suggestions on how we proceed on, we have, president, secretary.
I suggest that we maintain the present positions for all of the officers.
I'd be more than happy to have somebody take this if you we want to do it. It's just not
You're doing a good
something
job.
I'm
You're an excellent
married
job.
to, so you'll have no objection from me if you want.
I think you're doing a wonderful job.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, I do the best I can. I know that,
Your best is good enough.
that this is not my strong suit, but I'll do the best I can. And
You're excellent.
Yeah, I would agree, keep it how it is. I'm okay with it.
I am there.
It's going to be modification, though. We can come in with.
all right. Why as an announcement,
I'm officially retiring or resigning from the Army Board. I've been on the board for 20 years. And I always think you stop on your head. I do well, still got my mind, but this has been one of the best boards I've ever served on. And my mind tells me, quit on your letter. So I'm officially resigning from the board. I'd like to make a recommendation. Board approves of my replacement. I have a young man named,
Can we'll discuss in closed session, won't we, because we have to do a vote and everything.
close session.
Yes.
Officers.
Well,
Election officers.
no, not for the election of office, but
resign.
for his nomination
Okay.
of the board member, right? We have to go into closed session, you all have to meet him. We have him on, you'll discuss it in closed session.
But what about my official?
So we can't elect any board members until we decide if we're gonna accept his recommendation. You see what I'm saying? So, yes, how is he gonna have a position if we do elections without a board member?
He's already resigned today.
But that's what I'm saying, his replacement is online to meet you guys, and you
Well,
all could vet it. and
I
decide.
would entertain a motion if we accept Dr. White's recommendation.
Now,
Yes.
I've talked to him, asked him to stay longer. He's, I can tell you when you lose institutional memory from the board or any other organization, it's irreplaceable. And he's got the institutional memory. He's been here longer than anyone on the board or anyone working here. So that 20 years of institutional memory is going to be missed. And, but I also understand what he's saying. It's time to spend some time doing other things.
This is one of the best boards of all my 20 years of work that I've ever worked, so we need to be commended.
I asked him to stay on as well. I'll do it now then, since we all have, but I asked him to stay on as well, and he chose not to. And he said, "Now, Mark, I just want to go out quietly." He said, "I don't want any fanfare. I don't want you all to do anything for me." He said, "I just want to go out quietly." He said, if they went off the board, but I couldn't do that, so we had to recognize, and I had to keep it quiet because he didn't want me to tell anybody. So I think I did pretty good. So, but Dr. White, we certainly appreciate you and your service to the RMA Board of Directors for 20 years. And you're not only a board member, but you're my friend. And so you've been very supportive from day one, and I thank you for everything you've done for RMA, the students, the faculty, and for our board. And so we have this plaque for you that says, Dr. Francis White, for your commitment and service as a board member, 2004 to 2024.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
And tell Rhea half of us.
My wife, I'm a good board member, everywhere I come to the board, she thinks she's on the board.
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll miss you.
Here's the bag and the envelope.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Entertain a motion that we accept our White's resignation.
Rose Thompson, I recommend that you accept Dr. White's resignation from the board. after serving 20 years.
Have a second motion. Vote,
Donald Demick, yes.
Rose Thompson, yes.
Chris Pearson, yes.
Bob Lemons, yes.
So what happened if we wouldn't have accepted the resignation?
Accepting it, at the end, close this meeting, I'll amend that motion that we accept the resignation effective the end of this meeting.
We could have denied his motion, we just, we wouldn't have seconded, we could have kept him on the board, yes.
Now, do you want to, can he make his recommendation now?
Yes, and then I think we have to go into closed session to discuss, and the board will have to, you know, either vote to, you know, for the candidate or not.
Yes.
I, the board, I recommend a young man who I've met with, entrepreneur businessman named Julius, I pronounce him Baywan. He's young, energetic. I have had a meeting with him to tell him about the RMA school board. How we are unity, we want to all work together, and I think we do an excellent job in replacing me, and he works with the superintendent as well as working with the board. He's from Houston, as I said before, he's an entrepreneur, young guy, a lot of ideas. I think he can come in and work with the board very good in terms of if the board approves my recommendation here to the school. I think you have a copy of his resume. I think he'll be on video. Am I correct, Doctor?
Yes, he's on, we'll go into closed session.
I would suggest that since we have two other guests waiting to present, I don't think these presentations should be terribly long, that perhaps we have Dr. Marquez, Dr. Bourgeois, and then move back to this, go into executive session. Then we're only keeping our own in-house staff waiting instead of our guests. That's acceptable. So let's move on to the next item on the agenda for right now, which Dr. Marquez. Dr. Marquez, are you online?
He is on our.
Richard, you with us?
Yes, sir, he is on. Maybe he's just trying to get his volume on. There we go.
There he is. Morning, Richard.
Welcome, Dr. Marquez. Do you have your name tag on so I can know your name? First time I met Dr. Marquez,
You're muted.
he put his hand over his name tag and came back in about 10 minutes and talked to me to see if I knew his name. And I didn't, but I learned a lot from him for the last 15 years. And so that was the first thing I learned is to remember people's name if you're doing business with them. Dr. Marquez, I think you're muted, or maybe we have you muted.
No, he's on.
He's on now. Hold on, Richard, we can't hear you. I think it may be on our side. Hold on, Richard.
Hold on,
We can't hear you yet. We'll tell you when we're ready.
Can you hear me?
We
Yes,
can
we can
hear
hear
you, but
Then I don't believe, I think it's maybe on Mr. Marquez side.
Okay. Hold on, Richard. Hold on. I don't think he can hear us either.
No,
Okay, let me call him.
he may need to leave and he might join back. Yes.
Let me see.
we'll tell you what, when you go between a laptop and an iPad, and you start on the laptop trying to open the screen.
Done that.
We just talked about that yesterday. How many times we're like,
I
going
asked,
to your computer trying to.
I asked my associate, if I couldn't have got one, she said, yeah, for another $400-500. I said, well, it would have been worth it. So,
That's great.
Yeah, did not answer. Okay, maybe he left. He's trying.
I know.
Yes, he left, and I'll wait for him to join back in.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm having trouble with launching for some reason or other, I can't get the speakers on.
Okay, what? Try jumping back in or try going back, logging back in on the link and see if it connects your
Dr.
audio.
Anderson?
Yes, ma'am.
So sir, what if he gets back on Zoom and if we can't hear him, maybe we could leave his phone on?
Okay, well, if you
Would that
jump back,
work?
to Zoom, we can leave my phone on and you can
Yes.
speak through the phone.
All right, great.
Okay. Okay, so I need to hang up, Richard, or?
Okay, he
No, no,
is,
hold on.
he's joining now.
Okay.
This meeting is being recorded. I can hear you.
I'm gonna mute you to see if you can hear me through the computer. I'm gonna mute you.
Okay,
I can hear you, on the computer.
Okay, you hear us now, Richard?
Yeah, I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, well then I'm gonna hang up.
he's muted on his end.
Okay, unmute your computer. I'm gonna hang up. Okay, is he unmuted now?
No, he's still muted. I've asked for him to unmute on our end, but he's still muted.
back up on the list.
And he jumped off. Oh, he's there.
Okay, Richard, can you hear us now? We can't hear you.
He can hear us, but we can't hear him.
His microphone's probably not on his laptop,
Mhm.
so the best bet is probably just get him on, have a mute.
We can,
off
put-
it, and then
yeah.
call him.
Yeah, I'm calling. Okay, Richard,
Yeah, I said,
okay,
I can't get this thing
Oh.
working, I can.
okay, I'm gonna keep you on the phone, but I need you to mute your computer.
Tell you what, hold on a second. Hold on a second.
He's muted on his end. And I think he might be joining via his phone. Maybe. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
No, we'll just keep you on the phone. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. All right, then, can you all hear my phone? Okay. Okay, Richard, just a quick, introduction of Mr. Marquez. Mr. Marquez was the former, CEO of Texas Can Academy for a number of years, which was the largest Dropout Recovery School System in the state of Texas at one point in time, and he led it very effectively. And one of the things that they were really good at was getting kids. They had at one time around 5,500 students. Is that correct, Richard? About 5,500?
Yeah, that's about right.
About 5,500 students. And they were able to run a budget of somewhere around $64 million. And so I leaned on Richard when I first came to RMA. He was a friend of mine. He was willing to share information. He was willing to meet with me, and he was willing to help our organization try and move forward. And then about 2 years later, he retired from Texans Can, and he was doing consultant work. And so I reached out to him to try and work with our organization, with Carrie, and with myself in looking at, and our principals, and looking at how we can better increase attendance and enrollment. And so Richard has done an audit for us this year, and I've asked him to share his findings and share with the board where he sees deficiencies and where his recommendations, and offer the board an opportunity to ask Richard questions that you feel may be of benefit to RMA. All right, Richard, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, I don't want to get into the discoveries because I want to get into any negatives. I prefer just moving forward with recommendations. That way it keeps it positive and it gives it an effective lead. Every organization, any organization that wants to increase enrollment needs to make that the overall priority of the organization. If that means from the janitor, the custodian, all the way to the CEO, everybody needs to be recruited. And everybody needs to speak well of their organization. The litmus test is, would you send your child to RMA? The answer would have to be yes. So basically, the entire organization needs to be focused on getting kids to their school. I'm not liking the sound.
We're getting feedback.
He's muted on both, it's on here too.
Yeah, we're getting feedback, Richard, but we don't have a remedy here.
Hold on, let me see if I can get it on my phone, we might be able to get that done.
You're muted, Richard, we can't hear you.
All right.
When you signed in on your computer, Richard, did you select,
Let me sign out. Let me sign out.
because your microphone on your computer must not be connected.
So,
All right.
That's better.
That's good.
Am I in on the meeting now?
perfect.
Yes.
Well, you're on my phone. He's on my phone. You're on the screen, but you're still on my phone. But we can hear you.
It's good.
Yeah, that should work.
He's connected to two devices. I don't know if it would be able for him to log out of one.
Richard, you're connected to two devices.
Let's see, Dr. Anderson, I think maybe he did already.
Yeah,
Jump-
it's one
Okay,
device.
okay, then maybe now it should work.
Richard, are you still there?
And he's unmuted.
Okay, Richard, you there? Richard?
Can you hear me, Armand?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, let's do it this way. I've got it on my phone. I can see the screen, so let's just do it on my phone. You won't give me feedback. How's that?
You're good. We're here all ears.
All right, great. All right, so basically, on the first slide, basically what I'm saying is, if you say that you're a recruiting organization, then be one. And it's all gotta be it has to be your DNA. So everywhere you go, anyone you talk to, somebody out there's having problems with a child. So if you bring up the conversation many times, all you have to do is say, why don't you come by and give us a try? That happened with a city council person in Dallas, and she sent her child over and the child graduated. I mean, when you have those conversations consistently, you're gonna get kids. So you should have that as a priority in your buildings. It should be posted. Your attendance, your daily attendance should be posted. It should be in everybody's face day in and day out. And everybody at Central needs to be accountable for what's going on with recruitment and attendance out in the schools. You'd think you wouldn't be, but you know what? Everybody has to figure out a way to get out there to support those schools and see to it that you get more kids. Now, you're still going to be turning kids. You're still going to be getting in and outs. And that's accepted and that's expected. But the whole idea is the more kids you get, the more kids are going to be able to hang on with you, and the more you're going to be able to do, because you and I both know that everything at charter schools runs on student enrollment, and you can't get anything done anywhere without money. So that's where you are in terms of it, and so that's in a nutshell. Now I'll make some recommendations. One of the things I recommended is you have an SCL, and nowhere on that SCL's job description was recruitment. So I worked with Dr. Gibbons, and that job description has been redone, and so the people will have to probably re-interview for that position, because you can't automatically slot people into the position where the job description has changed. And that works out because that'll give the principals an opportunity to pick someone they feel can, or at least Armand and the principals an opportunity to pick people who they feel have the ability to go out and recruit. So the other recommendations I made were your advertising. Let me talk about a little bit about advertising. One of the lessons we learned is that advertising will bring you a few kids, but it's not worth the cost. It just will not generate enough students, and in the long run, it just wears you out. We even had all the buses in Austin and Dallas with signs at Khan Academies and everything else, and the return on investment proved that it just didn't work. And so radio ads and all those other kinds of things. What drives our students and the students in RMA is word of mouth, and it's relationships. Where did you hear about us? Well, my brother came here, or my cousin, or my aunt told me about it, or those are the stories you get. Or my counselor sent me over here, or or the probation officer told me I had to come. Those are the kinds of places where we picked up our kids, and it's all about building relationships. When people know you, they know you're there, they think about you, And when a kid is in trouble, the first thing they'll do is they'll call you. I used to have people actually call me and tell me that they had a kid that was struggling. And obviously I would invited them out to take a tour and to look at the school and to make their decisions. So in your enrollment and recruitment in this business with the dropouts is really an individual relationship building issue. You have to get to know everybody in your community. You need to go out and meet people day in and day out. Even the guy at the local donut shop knows a kid that's in trouble, hangs out there, or a kid that doesn't go to school, or a child who, or a parent who has a teenager who's struggling. They're out there, but it just takes a little time and effort to get out there and let people know who you are, what you're doing, and get kids to you. One of the amazing things was that the Academy was around for 20 years, and especially in Dallas. And people still don't know what the Khan Academy is and where it is and so on and so forth. There are 5 campuses in Dallas, in the Dallas area. And if you ask people, they'll tell you, I don't know what that is. And so when people at RMA would tell me, well, people don't even know who we are, where we are, I would just laugh. Because, I mean, if anybody had PR, if anybody had a footprint somewhere, it was us. And people still didn't know who we were. So you can't get discouraged about that. People only know about what they really are concerned about, what they really want to do. So that to a large extent is what I put in the report. Now, there's one little thing that I learned this past year working in the schools. One of the things is that, well, let me back up a little. I'm going to date myself. In 1990, I was the advisor to the United States Secretary of Education on dropout prevention. And one of the things that I learned is that at the 5th grade, kids make a decision to drop out of school. And it's all because things have gone wrong in the 4th grade. And so that reminded me, I was reminded of that when I was working with the kids at the schools. And so I started talking to the kids who were with you for a long period, actually were with you for a year to 2 years. And what I found is that those students actually had a good 3rd and 4th grade experience. And so that led me back to that whole aspect that something went wrong in the middle and the high schools, but that those kids actually had a good school experience somewhere in their lives. And that you could lean back on that, and that's what would keep them at RMA. And if I'd have known that, we'd have worked that angle at the Khan Academies also. But we never interviewed the kids. What we did do is give them a reading test, but we never spent at least 3 or 4 minutes with each kid talking about their past high school or past school experiences. So I put together a quick little interview, and I ran it for a couple of the schools, and I showed them how to do it. And it only takes about 3 minutes. And it's a small number of questions, and basically what you ask is, what do you remember? What do you remember from 3rd grade? What do you remember from 4th grade? If the child says, you know, I remember my teacher, I remember these things, or I remember, in other words, those positive experiences, chances are pretty good you've got a chance with that kid. If that child says, oh, I don't remember 3rd grade, I don't remember elementary, or I had a terrible time, blah, blah, blah. I'm afraid that child's going to struggle. You better get that parent's number and be sure it works right then and there before anybody leaves. Because that's the kid who's gonna struggle because they have not had a structured school experience, and you won't be able to give it to them either. So those are, but I'm not telling you that you're gonna deny any kid, because you have to take them all, because you never know which one is gonna prove you wrong. And you like that to happen once in a while. You wanna be proven wrong, because it's all about trying to save kids.
Absolutely.
But that little interview, I think will.
Oh, Richard, you went, Richard? Richard?
That I learned.
Hey, Richard, your reception is going in and out.
That you use billboards. A lot of your schools are in small markets, and so most people drive past on the same roads. And if you use a billboard and you design a good message on it that speaks directly to them about their child, I would put a billboard up in August and September, take them down in October, November, and then put them back up in December or January. So I just do targeted months when I needed to jumpstart the enrollment or build it back up again. So that's a inexpensive way of getting your message out, but I think it'll be an effective way. But other than that, I put together a calendar of recruitment suggestions for Dr. Anderson, and he has that. So there's a way of going about checking. Now, the other thing I would tell you is it's the same old story. If you don't check it, it never gets done. So that's where I'd like to continue to be involved with you, because I'd like to work with those SELs. And basically, I'd like, in a nice way, to monitor their what they're doing, when they're doing, how they're going about doing it. Because if they're doing it right, they're going to have a lot of people that they know, and they're going to have a lot of numbers on their Rolodex, or should I say on their phones. And they're going to be talking to a lot of people. So every so often, somebody just needs to follow up and call some of those people and say, how's the experience? How you enjoy working with so-and-so? And it's kind of like checking up on them. And the reality is, the answer is yes. If you don't check up on them, you're not going to get what you expect. So, and they have to be trained. And the training isn't all that extensive. It's really good human interaction training. It's really just learning how to talk to people and being straightforward and knowing that people do not have a lot of time. So you have to make your message a quick little 2 to 3 minute elevator speech. You have to be able to say everything in 2 to 3 minutes. And then you have to keep showing up. You have to go by there every so often, even if it's just to say hello. Or even if it's just a drop off a dozen donuts, or even if it's just anything that'll give you an excuse to just go by there and say, hey, just came by to say hello. Thank you for sending me those 2 kids. I really appreciate it. Let me know if you have any more. And those kinds of things. So it's all about building relationships. And as you know, that's the business we're in anyway. It's all about human interaction and human relationships. So that's about it in a nutshell.
Mr. Marquez, my name is Mirza Pearson. Wanted to introduce myself. I have a question for you. I have a 2-part question for you. First of all, let me kind of summarize what you are suggesting. You are suggesting that a culture needs to be built within RMA that's cohesive and is understood by anybody, but also that public reach is very important. I want to propose the following to all our staff, and I'm just speaking on behalf of myself, and hopefully my board will go ahead and join, but I think it's very important that as board members, that each one of us actually go out to a networking group, whether it be your Chamber of Commerce, whether it be a coffee morning, and actually talk about RMA. I think that from what I see, we lean a lot on our faculty, like our in-school faculty, to do that outreach, and that's very hard to do when you're already 8 hours of the day inside a building. And I think if we start as leaders, as board members, and getting out at least once a quarter, just to get started, I don't mind going into it once a week, twice a month, and talking to different organizations that would allow these coffee morning chats to just present who we are and what we do and our goal is. It's a great outreach on its own. But I would also encourage our staff, if they have that ability to do that, to be able to at least once every semester to go out into the public, whether it be, again, your Chamber of Commerce is a really good group, a coffee morning networking group, and just present who RMA is, as simple as that. So I think this is what Mr. Marquez is talking about, is actually doing that community, building that culture, but we all need to be cohesive in what our goal is and who we're trying to retain and what we're trying to do. Now, Ms. Thompson and I are sitting here talking in the background and creating our ideas as we're speaking about. And she did bring up a good point. I mean, she had mentioned that as a principal, she spent the time in talking to each one of her students. And I think that's on the school level, that might be very important to do. Well, it is important to do. But I think that we can all commit together and bring that focus, because we already wear, like mentioned yesterday, a whole lot of hats and things that we do. But we cannot just rely on certain staff members to just do the outreach. It's a responsibility of each and every one of us to do. With that being said, I would also like to know what your findings were. I know that we didn't want to touch on it, but I do want to know what the biggest hurdle was, other than the recruitment aspect, that you felt was a big red flag for you, and where we need to improve.
Well, it goes back to the building of that culture of recruitment. There wasn't one. And as a matter of fact, when I would suggest people going out to visit the schools, some of the people would just give me the same old worn out story about, well, we've tried, and blah, blah, and so on and so forth. And I would basically ask, well, where have you tried? What have you done? And who have you talked to? And I just get this long drawn out story. And I would basically say, you've got to go out there, you got to meet the people, you have to do some things and make suggestions. And when I make suggestions, they follow through and they find out that things work. Like one of the things I suggested was that they have a luncheon and invite the counselors. And some of the schools did that and had great results with the counselors coming out to visit and getting to see what they were doing. But it doesn't stop there. Once the counselors are in, you have to get their numbers and follow up and go by and see them and all kinds of those kinds of things. And those things were just not happening. And there was nobody to blame. I think it was just one of those things that over time, people just felt like the kids that are going to come are going to come, and the kids that are not are not. And so that's why it needs to change to, we're all recruiters. And what I would say to you is, those Chamber of Commerce things are good, but sometimes the grocery store is the best place, because you're gonna run into a friend of yours. You're gonna start talking about, you're a board member at RMA, what RMA does. And they might just say, well, my neighbor has a kid they're having problems with. And you say, well, get your neighbor, call me. And here's my number. A lot of times that gets you a lot more traction. You'd be surprised how everyday interactions in places where you are day in and day out, if you keep it in the back of your mind that you're a recruiter for RMA, you'd be surprised how many times people are going to talk to you and ask you about getting kids to you.
Okay. And so when you were doing these interviews, was it mostly at the school level, or were we talking to some staff, or?
I was at the schools. I visited the schools. As a matter of fact, I worked in your schools. I worked at the one in one of the Houston campuses. I worked with the principal specifically, and her school became a seed. I I worked at Colleen and he's doing much better academically and Fort Worth. And that school, now that school was a mess. I think you had 4 principals in a short period of time, but the gentleman you have working there now is doing a fantastic job. But I would always talk to them about recruitment, and I would always talk to them about enrollment. And I would always say to them, your campus is a good campus. Your kids are well behaved. You're doing a good job. Why aren't more people coming to you? Why aren't you getting out there and selling what you have? But I would get the same thing. It just wasn't part of what they were expected to do. So it's just basically changing the expectation and then holding people accountable.
I agree. So one of my observations is that with our staff, they have a lot on their books already, right? But it's always like, this is their responsibility, this is this person's responsibility. And I think working on a cohesive calendar and making sure that everybody is accountable for certain actions, basically, whether it's having an open house and working and getting as much done in one event versus just one go would be probably a little bit better. So with that being said, like I offer myself and whatever I can help you guys at any time, at any point. My background is in marketing. I have built, completely. I have built divisions basically completely and have turnaround companies. And so at any point, and this is something that's actually not as difficult to do and can be very easily streamlined and making our staff basically just one small task versus a lot of work being pinned on somebody else. And I can promise I can put this calendar myself together for you guys. And if you can just kind of direct me as to who I should work with a little bit more and making it easy for them, just to kind of streamline it. But I think starting at the open houses, for example, bringing in our counselors and principals from ISDs, because even I, like in the corpus Christi setting, speak to other counselors. And although there is that vibrant division between ISDs and charter, these principals and counselors know that there is a place for their students in the charter world as well.
Well, one of the things, one of the points that we consistently made when talking to the ISD schools is we stay away from the word charter. That has a negative connotation that drives everybody at the ISDs crazy. What we would basically say is, look, we're your partner. We're not here to take your good kids. We didn't come to do those kinds of things. We're coming here to take the kids that you're struggling with. And you know what? If we get them back standing up straight, we'll even send them back to you, let them graduate here. We don't care as long as they graduate. So the message was always different. It was like, we're not competing with you, we're competing with the streets. So they would understand that you're really not a charter.
So Richard, and piggyback, 2 things. One, Ms. Pearson is asking about the calendar which you have created for me, which I'll share with her, and then you and Ms. Pearson and I'll set up a meeting to visit, and we can kind of mesh your calendar or your proposed calendar with Ms. Pearson's ideas and see about that. But the other question I want to ask is, so as we go into these ISDs, now that so many of them, and you know as well as I do, before when RMA started, CAN started, they didn't have dropout recovery programs in the ISD. So what would be your plea against a district that has their own dropout recovery system set up now?
Well, one of the things you find in their dropout recovery systems is they only take certain kids. In other words, if a kid has absences, if a kid has failing grade, if you look at, they can't handle all their kids. That's the first thing. The other thing is that some kids don't do well in their programs as it is. So there are kids that fall out of that program. If you go by that program and talk to whoever's running it, they'll actually send you some of their kids who aren't doing well in their programs.
Correct.
So, there, you know, there are different ways of picking up kids. The sad thing is that there's enough of them to go around. It's the good thing and the bad thing is they're enough, and the bad thing is they're enough. So, but you know, when I talk about going to visit, I'm talking about a one-legged drive-by. I'm not talking about going over there and spending half the morning. I'm talking about driving to work in the morning and pulling up at the high school and just going by there and spending 5 minutes, 10 minutes with the counselor and saying, hey, I just came by to say good morning and dropped off some donuts. Don't forget about us. Here's a couple of pamphlets just in case. And thank you for everything you do for us. And bam, I'm gone. I'm off to work. So I'm not talking about things that take a lot of time. I'm talking about things that are strategic and that people learn to do automatically so that they increase the number of kids. Like at the truant courts, I'd get to know the judge. I mean, I'd basically go by there and say, hello, judge, I just came by to say hello. You know, and keep me in mind. And even the truant officers and so on, everybody else, they know me by name. Because if they know me by name, anytime they have a problem or anytime they need a solution, they're gonna give me a call.
That's correct.
Other questions?
One comment he had, this is just an aside note, he said maybe hire someone with a social work background and an RMA student. And we have that student that just graduated with a master's degree from Merritt-Baylor, and they're very into RMA. So I would like someone to talk to that student. Okay.
Yeah, they do a great job because social workers know how to work in the community. They know how to get into, they're not afraid of the community. And so they build all those networks.
Any other questions, comments?
Richard, you have anything else?
No, Armand, I try to keep it as succinct as possible. I know you got a lot of work to do.
Well, as I said before, Richard, I much appreciation. Not only is he a consultant, but he's my friend. And I think that he has a lot of knowledge and value, and so we have continued to lean on him for and we'll continue, if the board allows us to work with Mr. Marquez. Right. Well then, Richard, you have a good weekend. Happy Father's Day to you, sir.
Oh, same to you, Armand. Same to the rest of you. And as a reminder, let me tell you what I did with my kids. Father's Day happens to be the 29th holiday on the list. It's Christmas and Mother's Day at number 1 and 2. Father's Day is number 29. So I said, in lieu of presents, figure out something you can give me that incorporates the number 2 and the number 9 in any combination. So
They might give you $2.09.
And they have clothes that I don't wear or other stuff that you know, that sits in the closet. It's not fair. So this way, I think we keep it on a good note and everybody gets to laugh.
All right. Well, take care, Richard. Thank you again.
Thank
All right,
you.
Armand.
Bye.
All right.
I enjoyed that conversation. Like there told you guys, I talked to one of the principals of Corpus Christi, and this was at the middle school level, and we had a student that was older. And some of these students, I mean, it doesn't necessarily always mean, I think we need a combination of all types of students, quite honestly. But for example, Clay Farmers Workers of America, because some of these students are, you know, still having had transitioned in need of a fast track to be done with high school. So we really do want to focus on those as well. But in this case, he was already, he was about to turn 16, was held back in the early stages. And he felt like this is a student that just needs to be, has, you know, go to high school and not, you know, be in A grade. And those are really the situation. The ISDs are fearful, and so trying to work with the ISDs, especially in Corpus Christi, it's a battle. I poked around. I'm now being targeted, but it's okay. But the principals understand what their students need and they don't care. And that's really where we need to work on.
Anything else? We're move on to the next item on the agenda. So Dr. Bourgeois still with us?
Dr. B,
I'm here. Can you hear me?
yes, sir. You look so
Wonderful.
scholarly.
Oh, I try. I try
All
to
those
take it.
degrees and books
Oh, yeah.
make me look bad.
Come on now.
All right. Well, Dr. Bourgeois has done our climate and culture surveys for, what is this now, year 3, Dr. B?
We just finished year 3. Yes, sir.
And he has done a fine job, and I know that the board has been pleased. I know Mr. Clemens loves his findings and the way that he breaks down the data of what we're seeing. Now, when I looked at it this year, it looked more like it was from the campus level as far as the climate and culture surveys. And so I found his findings to be good. Again, he looked at retention, he looked at bullying, he looked at campuses. So a lot of data that he's going to share with the board as we, part of our strategic plan is looking and evaluating and trying to improve climate and culture throughout the district. And so, Dr. Bourgeois, at this time, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Anderson. It's good to see some of you there, and looking forward to presenting. This is high level, and there's a idea of doing a little bit more drill down in areas of interest, and that's why I wanted to compare campuses. And this is third year data, so we have some longitudinal data as well. I'm going to share my screen and go through the presentation, which I think you have already in a PDF form. So you're kind of going to get my take on the data. I'm very excited that you're doing the 360 surveys. You get a different type of insight from staff members. They are there every day. They have great insight into leadership, particularly in school climate. Parents are interesting because they have a view from a distance, from the eyes of their child. They may spend time on campus, but probably not that much. And then students are right in the middle of everything. So we're breaking it down that way into the 3 different areas. And let me go ahead and split it up first with the staff. Participation is important, and the blue is from this fall, and then the green is from this spring. And so overall, we did have a relatively smaller sample size from the staff survey. And then looking at campus, this is important also. You know the size of your campuses and what to expect, but we did have different responses from the staff. And really, as long as we have 10 cases or more, we're comfortable aggregating the data and doing that level, school level analysis. And then for the staff, we even have central office, and that looks like a pretty strong participation there. The analysis is comparing schools, and so we do a sort from high to low. So you can see we have Fort Worth at the highest and then Pasadena at the lowest. Occasionally you're going to see this red with a down arrow, or you'll see a blue with an up arrow. That means that it's a significant difference, and I'm talking statistically. It's different from the mean if you find the mean score. Okay, and so that mean score is right here for all of this. And then we're comparing it to the AHARD average, and I work with hundreds of schools, and so this is an average for this item from all the surveys of staff members that we have. one of the key findings is that across most items, there's significant difference by campus, and you can see that there are patterns. And so be looking for campuses at the high end and the low end, and see if there are some patterns worth discussing. So this is welcoming environment, perceptions of staff members. Second area is safety. And you can see once again that there are some pretty big differences by campus. And as board members look at this, and does this confirm any expectations that you had before you saw this analysis? That you can see the perceptions are lower than the AHART average, and then there's some very high schools, and then quite a distribution there. Student kindness, this is typically something that we ask students, and we did, so you're going to see what they say about each other. But I think this is a fascinating question from the perspective of staff members also, and this is really low. So we have used this with quite a few schools also, and this is one of those flags to look at, the perceptions of students treating each other well. Bullying, we express it positively. It's not a problem, and relatively stable scores across your campuses, because you can see these aren't blue or red, so they're really not different from each other statistically, even though the lines show that they're slightly different, but you shouldn't take that too seriously. And then we have one that's low, and want to take a look at that, and that's where you look at the qualitative data and see if anything comes out, and that's how you use the whole survey. Ideally, you drill down to campus, and then some of those comments can give you some insight. And I do like what Mr. Marquez said about just asking the students, asking their perceptions of school a long time ago, but also just go right to the horse's mouth and ask, is bullying a problem here? What can we do? Disruptive student behavior, these do tend to be higher that we have, but there's clearly something going on, but these aren't really significant differences. They're relatively low here. And then with all of that in mind, you have a very high intention to return. And I'm not sure how this aligns with actual retention, and you probably know, or there's a certain date in June where you have to know for sure, but these are great numbers. And so the faculty, they're being discerning, taking this survey. They want things to improve. And I think psychologically that means they may give a lot of responses that are in the middle or lower end just because they want to get better. But they're voting with their feet, and this intention to return is a very strong number. It's probably the most important metric in addition to the Net Promoter Score. And I presented a year ago, so I think you remember this, but we break it down. It's an 11-point scale. So they have a 0 to a 10. And they're just asking we're asking them, and pardon me, I misplaced that letter. That should be RMA. Is it a place to work that they would recommend? It's a real tough metric. And really you compare the promoters. These are 9s and 10s. They would actively promote this and tell their friends and colleagues that this is a place you should work. And then detractors, 0 to 6, they could actively be saying negative things about the school. And it's a tough scale. The passives like the school, but they're probably not going to outwardly promote it. And promoting the school is really important from a student standpoint and certainly from a staff standpoint. And what we do is a calculation. We take the percentage of promoters and we subtract the detractors. And you're going to see this from staff, parents, and students. And we always see an incredible spread here. This is 2024, is what we just did. So you have some negative Net Promoter Scores, which is not uncommon, and then you have some positive. But if there's one item that really captures the culture and what your staff is thinking, this is the one. So I would look at this hard, and then the changes from last time, this is just a visual, that because we have two seasons of data. But the trajectory is maybe something, but you have to decide, is there something at play with a drop from a very high net promoter score to a low? And then we also have some improvements from a 17 to a 50. But I really like that's this analysis. But particularly the extremes, because those are the ones who talk about your school one way or the other.
So,
Yeah.
Dr. B.
Yes, sir.
So then tying that back to Mr. Marquez's comment about word of mouth. If people are saying bad things about RMA, it ties directly to the people not wanting to enroll.
100%. And all of these three groups are ambassadors, and the staff members do talk, and they're on social media, and this would be a little bit sobering to show them whatever their perceptions. They need to be very positive in the way that they speak about the school. Students are going to say what they want, but parents are the same thing. You know, they have a pretty good idea about the school, but you know, I've mentioned maybe before that the parent surveys have to do with parent education. You know, the fact that you're collecting data is a really positive interaction with them. Another possibility would be to give them some results, really high level, and say, we've heard you, here's what we're doing about it. But that's a great point, Dr. Anderson. They're all ambassadors for the school.
We need positive ambassadors.
Mm-hmm. So this is just a taste of the qualitative, and if I expand this report, and I think that's my intention, I'd like to dig into the reasons, the why. So we did some frequency counts of mentions because we had a big data set. It's all the staff, 166. Those who did open-ended questions, so a lot of them skipped them, but these are the themes that came out, and then there were others that we didn't. We just picked the top 5. But they're talking about positive things: our student success, supportive environment, collaboration, professional growth, and class size. And then we have some quotes here: preparing students for college and a career, welcoming, loving environment. So probably reading these comments, you're going to get a lot like this, and then you also are going to get some on the other side. And so we grabbed a couple of quotes that we think are representative. But there's some mixed, I mean, perceptions of leadership is really a campus decision. So this is not overall for RMA. We're talking about their perceptions of their school leadership. And we have some low ones here as well. And communication, and sometimes you'll hear negative things about communication and positive. But no one's happy about pay, stress, and resources. And so they talk here, a staff member, about competitive salary, and then communication. So these are areas of potential improvement. It's such a big survey that you really, as a staff, need to, and a board, think about what areas we want to place our attention, because there's a lot here. Okay, so now that you know the analysis, I'll go a little bit quicker. But you can see this time the parents, you had a much nicer turnout. So congratulations on that. That's really, really strong. And then by campus, you can see probably your larger campus, I assume, but it's also a proxy for parental involvement. And so if you have campuses, maybe larger campuses that have lower, it tells me that there may be something with the level of parental involvement and their knowledge about the school. So their goals, this is similar to a year ago, but higher education, I don't think anything surprises us here. But they have goals for their student that are pretty high. The advantages of RMA really mixed here. So they're interested in all of these things: the scheduling, acceleration, and some people miss that. They hear credit recovery and they think recovery, but students want to also finish and finish early if possible. And then the class size is always something that you have a great point for marketing.
So, Dr. B, quick
Yes.
question about location, going
Yeah.
back to location over there.
Yeah.
What was the, I guess, how did that come into a factor? How did location even, it's just that it was close to their home, or is that what the question was, or what was the question that led to the location?
That's a really good question. This question is a forced ranking of these. And so these were ranked the highest, and then they get a number for that ranking between 1. And I think we had, these 4 choices plus another. So it might not add up to 100, but it's really close. So this is relative importance from, say, these 4 exactly.
So those were the options they had to choose from.
They had to choose from these, yeah. So
I'm just curious, location of all, advantages, location would be.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I was asking. Okay,
Yeah, so it could be real important to them, but it's not as important as these other things, relative. So yeah, I'm glad you clarified that. And so that's true with all of these. So you can see they're just ranking them. It's not their satisfaction with this, but it's just, what do parents think is important? And so they're talking about engagement here. Some say the students are self-taught. And so forth. But yes, this is relative importance. And here we get to the ones where they're actually giving their satisfaction. And so it's on a scale, and it's the ones who agree or strongly agree. This I left as a heat map. So the dark green is high, the highest. And then there's going to be something red by definition because it's a heat map. So overall, you can see that this is the score, and then you have campuses above and below, understanding parents' point of view, visibility of the leader, addressing problems with urgency, being approachable or reachable. And remember, these are parents now, and then making decisions. So anything that's low, I think that parents tend to have a really low sample size of a school. They really don't know as much as they should about what goes on there, and getting parents at the school and communicating with them through newsletters, through things like this where you send out surveys, is going to improve those impressions. Some parents don't even know the names of their school's principal. I mean, quite honestly, my daughter's at high school. I don't know the name of the principal, and I'm a researcher. So if they don't know, it's not, it's up to you, to let them get to know the leader, because that is an important element of the relationship. School culture, we have a couple of slides on that, but it's really the same idea. If parents don't know what's happening at the school, they may give it a lower rating. But communication with this, remember, this is a high school, and so typically the parents are less engaged and less knowledgeable. They may send your students are 18 and they're fending for themselves. But these numbers, appear low. These are unique questions, so we don't have an AR average, but overall, there are some low points in culture, and the high points aren't as high as we would like. The second part of culture, and I hope you can read this. If it's too small, I apologize. These numbers for bullying aren't very high, actually. We tend to, are pretty high, moderate. We tend to have lower ones, actually. Very high scores on respecting diversity for the most part. Student kindness is in all 3 of these. So the staff was really low on this, and the parents are higher, thinking, oh yeah, they are kind to each other, but there's some difference by campus. And then the welcoming environment is pretty solid from the parent's standpoint. And then I put below here your average. And then there's the overall. School safety, just one.
Dr. B,
Yes, sir.
I find it interesting that the welcoming, if you'll go back to that slide,
Yeah.
there, like at Pasadena, the welcoming Pasadena by the teachers was lowest.
Mm-hmm.
By the parents, the perception is the one, I think, over one more. No, back towards on the welcoming.
Yeah, right here. Okay.
Yes. But if you look at the parent perspective or perception of it, it's high. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and so the question is, who has the most insight? Well, the parents are talking about welcoming from their perspective. So anytime they go to school, there's a lot hanging, on that, and so that's where
But
your
that
people.
climate and culture is it's very perceptive, because if the teachers doesn't see it as welcome, but the parents see it as very welcoming, where's the median there, how do you?
That's right, and and so your front office is really, really important because they lead that interaction with the parents, and they're going to make a judgment up or down right away on their first impression. So I'm going to continue with school safety. These are really high numbers, and that's what we want and expect from parents and their perceptions. And if they were low, that would be a flag, and we'd want to look to find out why. And you go right to the qualitative comments and find out what's on their mind, or you even dig in and do some focus groups or something. But these are really great numbers. And here's what we have on our average. So they're pretty much up there with everybody. Net Promoter Score, these are your customers, the ones who are gonna keep them there or send them someplace else or back to traditional ISD, private school. But notice the difference here. You have a lot of promoters. Compare this again to your staff, where it was really mixed and there were really more detractors on the staff. But your parents, this is strong, very strong, and you have some positive numbers. Our average is probably around 30, and so you have schools that are above the AHARD average, and so you're doing a good job, in some ways selling the school to the current parents. So these are impressive numbers, and I think as a board, this should get your attention. And another thing that should get your attention are these green arrows. It's showing that from the fall, I think we did this in September, October, to the spring, and we just closed this window. There's some really big improvements on most of the campuses. So what has happened between now and then? Are you communicating more with parents? What is it? But this is encouraging. I'm going to go on to the students unless Dr. Anderson, you want to bring anything up on the parents?
No.
Okay. Okay. Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm not done yet on this. So open-ended, parents' perceptions of a supportive staff, student success, effective communication, and that may be also on the next slide for a negative. It depends on the parent, but carrying all the things that we showed. And so the qualitative, the open-ended really aligns with some of the things that we saw in the scale. Now, and some of these quotes, I mean, these are really marketing quotes that you should use. You should tell them in a newsletter that a student said, "My daughter has excelled and it's not just catching up, but also learning. RMA has changed her life for the positive." So these are things that you might consider using in those newsletters or on your website. And then the negative ones you see, so communication is either poor or great, and probably nowhere in between for parents, but they're talking about availability. And so you get both sides on their open-ended comments, and we just asked them, this is from the whole survey. So they brought this up whenever they had a chance independently, about responding in 24 hours. And there's a mention about the parent portal. So parents have access to the school, but they also do through anything that's online. Those are parent interactions that are really important as well. So the student survey, this is a dramatic drop, and I know that we're at the very end of the school year and not ideal, but it may be something, Dr. Anderson, to keep in mind. We mentioned that we'd be going, should we do this next year, to one survey per year, which makes a lot of sense, but picking a strategic time, and maybe doing it in May is not as strategic as doing it earlier in the spring, possibly. Or
Well, let me say, something went terribly wrong, and I don't know what, but I'll investigate, because normally what my request is that we pick a class period.
Right.
just make the students do it during that class period. So if it's
Yeah.
second period, that's what should have happened.
Right.
What actually happened, I don't know, but that's why we had the 1,000. So I'll be digging into why we only had 225 kids, but
Okay.
normally we should be selecting a class period and the student should take, if it's English or science or whatever, period, and every kid in that class should have been taking that. So I'll find out. Did you freeze, Dr. B?
May have to come back in now.
Yeah, I think that he did freeze.
It does appear we lost connection with Dr. Bourgeois.
While we find him, I'm gonna run to the minute.
Is this the students?
Are y'all able to hear me?
Yeah.
I can, Dr. Bourgeois. In the conference room, can y'all hear us?
Yeah.
We can hear him, yes.
Okay.
So I apologize, our power went out in the house as I was about to finish the presentation, talk about students. But I can come up, what I'm gonna do if you don't, and I apologize for this, is to log into my laptop and rejoin.
Yes, sir. We'll just hold tight, sir.
All righty, thank you very much. Bye.
Okay.
For a long time, I was in the business of selling technology. We talked about technology people, why is it in the movies that can drive 100 miles an hour to a tunnel under the English Channel and drop bombs? We can't cross town. Obviously, technology in movies is much better than it is in the real world on the first one. But it's still one I wouldn't trade it. If y'all can remember the day when during a break, you'd be lining up to go out to the payphone so you could call your office, call home. That's the biggest reminder of me. There's also
We get it back?
He's getting back on. His power went out as he was finishing up.
July, I want you to know Miss Thompson said she hoped the meeting never over, so she don't have to ride with you back.
I have said it.
I'm leaving early, so I don't have to ride back.
My dad is in five and we're leaving to Europe this on Sunday. So I'm like, Dad, I think you need to talk to your doctor and get some anti-anxiety or something. But it's gonna be interesting. He's been cleaning the house left and right. He doesn't know what to do with himself right now. He's already nervous. And on top of that, you have to fly with mom.
Oh my.
That's the worst.
When that cart comes by with the wine.
Yes. They're funny.
Everybody, I'm thinking y'all might have already received my text message, but the hotel is allowing us to check out late. So we have until 2 o'clock for checkout.
No, sorry.
Asia Nelson, who was a student at Regional Learning, had just graduated with a master's. She is interested in having a conversation with y'all about recruiting in Killeen area.
Hey, Dr. B, did you have, is it on our end or your end?
Oh, I thought they could hear me. Our whole lights, our power is out, so I don't know if but I'm just powering up my laptop and rejoining the meeting if that works.
Okay, yes, we're just waiting on you to come back. So I was just checking to see where we were.
All righty, thanks, sir.
All right, see you in a few, thank you.
Yeah.
Everybody's having technology problems. What year did you graduate?
Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, because she has a master's now, so every 4 years of marriage, like failing.
6 years.
We're on base.
Yes. Good. That's what we started trying to work on, is building our alumni base, because we gotta keep in touch with alumni. Yeah, so
Sometimes the students already Killeen. They were running Killeen everywhere you could, from the lake to the distance, and it was just a lovely thing. So
That's what you should be. That pride.
and they came from That's it.
They were without a principal.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm
So
sure
you
that's
have the
the,
leadership and.
yeah.
Wow.
I remember it took a while to find somebody. West Texas is always hard to staff.
Yeah, you can imagine.
We have 9 candidates for, uh, between the Corpus and Lubbock this time. So it's always hard. Especially when you have, you gotta have recruitment, to go out to some of those places and really build
And it's so
relationships
remote.
with the colleges and universities, things of that nature.
And enhancing the culture and working with HR with students that when we are recruiting, there should be a little section in there that something don't say like those students. There's a whole list of things that you just don't publicize, and when you come to work with us, you need to sign something saying that I understand that.
With word of mouth being our number one, method, is it possible, like, if we're having open houses, we could do things, simple things like send out school messengers to all of our students and teachers saying RMA's having an open house this,
That's where I think we're the biggest
and
effort should
invite
be.
your family and friends. I mean, we have those lists.
Community members, community groups and.
Mhm.
Title I money, so a lot of times we can use those things to enhance parent involvement. And when I was thinking the other day, when you said we were talking about computer-based programs, there may be something in that or in some program, I don't know what we have that parents could tie into. And that is a strong way to say, we will show you how to fill out a FAFSA support
And see, we do that.
application with the parents but just, involve them like that because back then it was important for them to learn. That high school, they come in after school.
See, I'd like to do some computer courses, some things where we bring the, I would like to see that. Mr.
A little
Reynolds,
bit.
I would recommend we move on, and if Steve rejoins, we can just come
That's
back.
good. We're back online, and so we're recording.
Are we,
He has not
yeah,
joined.
can Becky get us recorded? Becky, let's move forward. If Steve comes back, we'll put him on the back end, he can finish up on the back side.
Hey,
Is anybody else?
Becky is.
Yes, I'm here. Okay, give me one moment to get the presentation back up.
again,
We're gonna start recording, but we're gonna go past Dr. Bourgeois, and we'll catch him after we finish up our other business.
Oh, he just joined.
Okay, are we sure?
He's joined right now.
Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Bourgeois, are you back on?
He's entering the room.
Dr. Bourgeois?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, are we ready?
Yeah, my apologies. We've lost all power, but and that took a little longer than I thought.
Okay. Then Becky, we're ready to continue. Dr. B is back on.
Okay, perfect. All right, so you should be seeing, I'm gonna go to the, are you seeing my slides?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so we were just talking about the student survey and the response rate, and we'll look into that.
Yes.
And then by campus, you can see the differences there.
Well, Amarillo had the largest student participation.
Yeah.
And who was the lowest?
What's that?
Which campus had the lowest student participation?
Yeah. So as far as the actual results, and I'm having a little trouble hearing, you can see once again that there's some significant higher and lower than the mean score for RMA from students on is this a welcoming environment? And it would be interesting to compare some of these because these are parallel for parents and staff. And that might be something for the full summative report. And it's very close to the average. School safety from the perspective of school students, you have some pretty high numbers and then some very low numbers. So once again, look into the open-ended to see what's at play with maybe these last 3 or 4. And what do the students mean by that score? Bullying, these numbers are actually above our average. And so that is real encouraging. Most schools have a lot of range in that. But here you did very well on these and over our national average. Student kindness. So this is what the students think. This is typical, and you can see our average at AHARD is really low also, and we give this almost on all of our student surveys. But you do have some pretty profound differences by campuses. So looking into that, looking into any of the open-ended comments that would substantiate either the high or the ones below, anything really below that average is worth a look. Disruptive behavior, you have almost a normal type distribution here, a little bit below the overall average, and then one school that students' perceptions, a couple are very low, and then some are relatively high. Net promoter score, this looks relatively balanced for the students between promoters and detractors. So it looked like the faculty, the staff was relatively lowest. The parents certainly were by far the highest, and the students fell somewhere in the middle here. And the net promoter scores, you have some positive, and our average is really near just 10 or something like that for students. Student net promoter score tends to be really low, and it gets lower with the higher grade levels. So our elementary students tend to be pretty high, and then they get grumpy as they get older. But you have some very high scores here, and then some ones anything below 0, and then some of these are relatively low. There's really not a pattern from fall to spring. You have both sides of that. And then the last 2 slides are some positive things from your students, support from teachers, flexibility, success, and then you have some quotes here. I usually stay to myself, but I know for a fact the staff are here if we need them, and that's encouraging. And it would be encouraging to your staff to see some of these positive statements from your students. And I know that we took all the open-ended and put them in a single sheet, and so you might consider that to find some student quotes that are positive, particularly for the faculty to look at. And then finally, the negative comments from students. Some of these, they said positive is support and negative. So you really had that on both sides. Some students are saying it's distracting and over-reliance on technology. That came up, well, that's a 7 and an 8 as far as number of mentions independently by students. And the negative statement, they just throw you at a Chromebook and say, get your work done. And I know that's not how school works there, but these are the impressions of some of your students. I always say view qualitative data with comment because every statement is unique and has a unique context. And that's it. And then once again, this is AHEART Solutions, and I wanted to thank you for working with us this third year.
AHEART's not a very good company.
Well, thank you. Okay, let's stop sharing. Now I can see you all again. And sorry for the technical difficulty. This has probably never happened to us in a board presentation. So thanks for your patience.
Questions for Dr. B?
Don't have any questions. I would be interested in yesterday in your report. I saw that there was quite a range in the campuses on the number of kids who were expelled from school. A couple were pretty high. I wondered how that affected some of these attitudes from students about safety and safety, or about behavior, or good learning environment.
Dr. Anderson, can you repeat the question? I heard some of it, but can you clarify?
The question was, what was the impact? We had a high number of students expelled, is that right, Ms. Clemens, expelled?
Some campuses we did, yes.
At some campuses, and what was the impact on the results of school safety? How do you think it affected the results of school safety?
Our learning environment.
Or the learning environment?
There's really no way for us to know with the survey because we're not assessing that directly, but those numbers would be important to note, because I would look at the qualitative and see if anything about that comes out. But those are really big factors, and I think a way to examine that is to compare that item in the fall, because you have that, and then in the spring, and see if those are differences, and that would be the way to isolate that.
Thank you. Well, I think we're ready to move on then.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day. Thank you all. Great to see you all again. Take care. Bye.
I don't know what our arrangement is, Dr. Anderson, but I hope this is something we're going to continue. I think every time he presents, the numbers are interesting as he has a bigger base and more comparison.
Yes.
And now we're ready to move back to our board reorganization or board election. I think we had discussion about keeping the same officers, but I don't think we really took action on that. If that's the pleasure of the board, I think we need a motion.
I'll make a motion. I motion to keep the same officers as we have for the 2020 year.
With the
exception of our new board member, we need to probably have him slotted in to the second vice president. I would imagine.
So I would think more about veterans.
With the exception of, replacing Dr. White's position. Is that acceptable with the motion?
Well, I would suggest that instead of the newbie serving as vice president, I would encourage one of our veterans to be moved into the vice presidency.
And we keep just president, vice president, secretary. Can we just keep president, vice president, presidency for?
President, vice president, secretary.
Okay.
Yeah, we could do that.
Without any
Sure.
movement for the following year. I think that our view, I agree that I think that view of wherever, just thinking best, we'll probably work with the US. It's gonna take some time for understanding of that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I would second the motion.
We have a motion second. Vote on the motion,
Donald Demick, yes.
Rose Thompson, yes.
Mayor Pearson, yes.
all the votes yes, motion carried. Uh, So now you suggest we go into executive session to meet our perspective
Yes, that's
as our
correct.
candidate. board. Okay, we'll go into executive session. It's, I get more on my phone over the time. Friday, June 14th at 10:43, more on my watch, I'm sorry. We're going to executive session. Becky, can you just set up?
Can you hear us?
You want me to stay or step out?
Like you said.
Jen and Liz, did y'all get an invite from me? Jennifer and Liz, are y'all there? Dr. Anderson, can you hear me?
Second record on. I think we have a couple of action items resulting from executive session that have a motion in relation to our change in board member or addition to the board.
I motion to have Julius Bayon join our board.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion second. We invite Julius Bayon as our board member to replace Dr. White. Dr. White stay another year, another 6 months. Chosen to accept his award, but he's also a volunteer to help us any way he can. On asking for pay, just do anything we need to help the keep the voter flow. So have a vote on that motion.
Donald Demick vote yes.
Rose Thompson, yes.
Mayor Pearson, yes.
Robert Clemens, yes. Okay. And we have a action after our review of superintendent's performance. We have a motion on contract extension for superintendent.
I move to extend the superintendent's contract for 3 years. 1 year.
1 year. We'll make it a 3-year extension,
Extend it 1 year.
which will make it 3 years.
Yes, which would make it 3 years.
I second the motion.
The motion second that we extend Dr. Anderson's contract for 1 year, continue on a 3-year contract.
Donald Nimitz, yes.
Rose Thompson, yes.
Mears Pearson, yes.
Robert Jones, yes, motion passed. Pastor, if I hear you say that we would, how are we gonna handle the update, this strategic plan, just,
All right, can you go to the strategic plan section? So as you all know, in 2023, Ms. Kiara Hughes helped us review and update our strategic plan in which the board, the faculty and principals and executive and central office had input. And so we came up with the 5 outcomes or 5 priorities, which were post-graduation outcomes, school leadership success, teacher recruitment and retention, risk mitigation, and establishment of the RMA Education Foundation. And so at this time, and going forward, let me apologize to you all, board, because in the past, we always brought updates twice a year, and we did not this year. So I do apologize for that, but starting next year, we'll give you an update twice a year. But for this year, I do want to share with you the data and the progress of our strategic plan, our 2023-2026 strategic plan. And that chart is included on the following pages there. We have the strategic plan and the priorities, but you can keep on going to the chart. All right, there you are. And so there we have the board matrix. This is what Dr. Bourgeois and Kiara Hughes came up with for us to measure the progress of the strategic plan. And if you remember, this is what Dr. Lee built my evaluation off of as well. So they all work together, Kiara, Dr. Bourgeois, and Dr. Lee. And so here are the first priority, which is post-graduation outcomes. Dr. Givens, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, could you very briefly, unless the board has any specific questions, would you just very briefly touch on these in like 2 minutes?
Probably do it less than that, sir.
Right.
We had one of our goals was to have a MOU with all 9 of our campuses. Currently, we have active MOUs with 6 of our 9 campuses. Student participation within those MOUs, our goal was 10%. We exceeded that by 17%, and 27% of our students have active participation within the MOUs that we have established. Our Texas College Bridge program, 64% of all of our eligible students are enrolled in Texas College Bridge. And we talked about those highlights yesterday in the State of the District report. And then finally, but definitely not least, students completing the CTE programs. Our goal was 20%, and we exceeded that by 3% at 23%. Any questions?
If none, then school leadership will be measured starting in, thank you, Dr. Gibbons. School leadership will be measured starting in 24-25 school year. As of right now, we have 2 principals that are leaving us, which is Ms. White, who is now going to be the new counselor coordinator for the district. And then Ms. Hannah has retired. This was her last year, so she's retiring in Corpus Christi. And so we would have lost 2 out of 9 principals. So that's where we are, just in case you're interested in that data. Now, with the sites with principal successors identified, Ms. Hannah and I and Dr. Gibbons did have a discussion when she notified us at the beginning of this year that she was going to retire. She did identify a successor. We are vetting him. We will continue. We will still do interviews. We still have outside applicants, but he is the one that Ms. Hannah has been working with and grooming to take that spot. So, but we still want to look at all candidates and all options, but we do have a successor for the Corpus Christi location. And so, and then as far as teacher recruitment and retention, as you can see, the average staffing level across all campuses, which was a measurement tool that the board wanted to keep an eye on, and the goal was 85%. and actually we have managed to stay at 92% fully staffed across the course of the year. And then that net promoter score, which you saw Stephen, Dr. Bourgeois present, the staff campus net promoter score, positive promoter of RMA schools from the staff, we fell well short, which that's no surprise because you all saw the red on Dr. Bourgeois' chart with the promoter and scores. So we still have much work to do there with the staff and their willingness to talk highly of RMA. And then the mid-year attrition rate, we were over by 1%. The board set the goal of 14% and we were at 15%, so we were 1% off of meeting the goal for the average mid-year attrition. Any questions? All right, then I will turn it over to Tammy and then Carl.
So for days cash on hand, we are at 121, which surpassed our goal. For budget, we did not meet our revenue budget, approximately under by about 16% of what we were trying to obtain for our revenues. We decreased our expenditures accordingly. We just didn't meet our revenue number. For Charter First, we did score 100 this past year for the rating that came out, and we are predicting 86 out of 100 for next year as of this point, which is also above standard. And then our charter school performance framework was 100 for the financial standard.
And
Hold on, any questions for Tammy?
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Tammy.
This year we had scheduled 3 of our annual safety and security audits. We were actually able to perform 4 of those due to the proximity of the West Texas campuses. It was more economical to do them all at one time, and so we did them this year. And compliance with drill log standards, we're at 100%. And as mentioned in earlier presentations, our compliance with the intruder detection audits, we scored 89%. But once again, we only had 1 finding at 1 school, which I think is pretty exceptional.
It has been corrected.
And it has been corrected.
Yeah, we did the corrective action, and Carl and I went back and forth on whether we were in compliance, which we technically are, but I wanted to be very transparent with the board and say that we did have any findings.
So with the state, we're in 100% compliance, but we'd love to hit every.
Any other questions for Carl? Then, last but not least, the goal is to get the foundation up and running in 2024, 2025. So you may want to let Adriana know that she needs to raise $2,000. So and let me talk a little bit about that. So, and I may have already said this, but we were not happy with the company we were working with. And so Ms. Pearson has introduced us to an individual that I think is going to be very good. And she has sent me a proposal, which I will review next week. And I will bring that to the board in July to contract to have her work with us and help us.
And then just to kind of touch on it, I mean, one of the things is like being able to raise scholarships, funds for emergency funds for teachers, and all of this needs to be, there's a real huge need for having a foundation. And be able to also apply for additional grants and services as well that aren't for nonprofits. So it's a really good addition.
And that is the strategic plan. Those are the 5 outcomes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
The only other discussion.
Becky, do we have any,
I think Ms. Thompson has some comments.
I just said the only other discussion is that we need to look at realigning the strategic plan to meet our needs for the upcoming year to make sure we're in sync with where we need to be.
All right, Mr. Clemens.
I think we're, other than check with Becky to see if we had any
No, Mr. Clemens, we did not receive any emails or phone calls or anything from the public requesting public comment.
Any other comments before we close the meeting?
Thank you, Dr. White, for your service.
Work, please. Please.
Thank Ray for his service.
My right hand, sir.
Meeting is adjourned. We'll see you next time.
All right, July 19th, right? Right.
I may be having cataract surgery.